The grandest stage in all the galaxy is supposed to be unbreakable. That's what they told us, at least. The energy shields surrounding the Galactic Sports Federation's arena were forged from materials beyond human comprehension, designed to withstand the strikes of warriors 10 times our size, the fury of plasma-based weaponry, even the gravitational pull of a collapsing star. No species in recorded history had ever so much as dented them, until one day a human did. Picture this: the roar of 1 trillion spectators from 1,000 worlds shaking the stadium walls, the air crackling with anticipation as the finals reach their climax. Jake "Titan" Morrow, the first human ever permitted to compete, steps forward for his final move. The crowd expects another predictable defeat. Humans are small, soft, laughably fragile compared to the galaxy's champions. But then the impossible happens. A single, earth-shattering strike from Titan's fist doesn't just crack the shield, it obliterates it. Sparks rain down like supernova debris. Silence swallows the arena, and then outrage, because in that moment the universe realizes something terrifying. The rules don't apply to us. What follows isn't just a scandal, it's a revelation. The Galactic Federation had spent centuries believing they'd seen every limit, mastered every physical law. Then humanity arrives, and in one reckless, glorious instant we rewrite them. The whispers start immediately: bans, restrictions, hushed debates about whether we're competitors or something far more dangerous. Because if a human can break the unbreakable, what else can we do? This isn't just a story about a sports match gone wrong. It's about what happens when an entire cosmos underestimates us, and the moment they realize they never should have let us off our planet in the first place. Stick around, because the truth is wilder than fiction, and by the end you'll understand exactly why humanity might just be the most terrifying thing the universe has ever seen. The footage spreads faster than light itself. Within hours, every corner of the galaxy has seen it the moment a human reduced the Federation's indestructible shield to glittering dust. High-ranking officials huddle in panic, their multi-jointed limbs trembling as they scramble to delete the evidence. But it's too late. The clip loops on every screen, from the neon-lit cities of Zeta Prime to the frozen bazaars of the Outermark colonies. And in the center of the storm stands Jake Morrow, wiping blood from his split knuckles, grinning like he just won a bar fight. A stern-faced Zenthian delegate, scales flushed crimson with rage, slams a clawed fist onto the tribunal table. This violates every law of physics, he snarls, vocal cords vibrating with outrage. The room erupts in agreement until Jake leans forward, still catching his breath. "Funny," he says, "back on Earth we've got a saying, laws are more like suggestions." The silence that follows isn't just shock, it's dread, because for the first time the galaxy's power brokers grasp the truth. Humans don't play by the rules, we rewrite them. Behind closed doors, emergency protocols activate. Secret holopads flash with classified reports. Human bone density exceeding predicted limits. Adrenaline surges that defy biological models, pain tolerance registers spiking off the charts. One panicked scientist labels it the anomaly factor. Another whispers a simpler term, evolution. Meanwhile, Jake's smirk becomes a rallying cry. Underground betting pools skyrocket as fringe colonies start chanting his name. The Federation wanted a spectacle, but they never expected a revolution. And as the first protests ignite on mining outposts and trade hubs, one thing becomes clear. Once humanity gets a taste of the impossible, there's no putting us back in the cage. The lab is silent except for the hum of machinery and the faint, rhythmic beeping of Jake's heart monitor. Vex 7, the Federation's most advanced AI overseer, towers over the examination table, its 12 photoreceptors scanning with surgical precision. Its voice cuts through the sterile air, clinical and untouched by emotion, until the first scan completes. The readouts flicker, then freeze, a glitch. Impossible. Vex 7 recalibrates, running the diagnostics again. The numbers don't change. Human adrenaline levels don't just spike, they explode, surging past thresholds deemed fatal for every other species in the database. A holographic chart materializes in the air, jagged red lines screaming off the scale. Subject Morrow's neurochemical response indicates a 47% increase in pain threshold during combat. Vex 7 intones, its synthetic voice wavering for the first time in its operational history. The AI zooms in on Jake's muscular fibers, revealing microfractures healed mid-fight, tendons reinforced under stress like carbon filament weaving itself tighter under pressure. Compensation patterns suggest adaptive evolution in real time. Jake, strapped to the table but still grinning, cranes his neck to see the display. Yeah, we call that getting pissed off. Works wonders. Vex 7's central processor thrums with something foreign, unease. It cross-references the data with millennia of biological archives searching for precedent. Nothing, not in the armored Krell, not in the hyper-metabolic Venari, not even in the long-extinct titans of Syrinx. The conclusion is inescapable. This is not evolution. Vex 7 murmurs, more to itself than the room. This is defiance. The AI's neural net recoils at the implications. If humans don't just endure stress but thrive under it, if their bodies rewrite their own limits in the heat of battle, what stops them from shattering every other rule? The scans flicker again, catching something deeper. Buried in Jake's DNA, nestled between base pairs, glitches of its own, anomalies. Vex 7 hesitates. These aren't mutations, they're design. Across the galaxy, the Federation's council watches the live feed in stunned silence. One truth rings clearer than any alarm. They weren't studying a new competitor. They'd awakened something far older, and it was just getting started. The lights flicker overhead, casting jagged shadows across the reinforced steel walls of the bunker lab buried 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert. Jake Morrow blinks against the sterile glare, his knuckles still throbbing from yesterday's training session, the one where he punched through a foot of solid titanium. "Congrats, kid," growls Coach Vance, a grizzled relic of the old world wars, his cybernetic eye whirring as it scans Jake's vitals. "You just graduated from lab rat to ticking time bomb." A holographic feed snaps to life above the central console, revealing rows of human test subjects mid-combat, each moving faster, hitting harder, healing quicker than physics should allow. Dr. Lyra Chen, her white coat streaked with coffee stains, taps a key. The footage rewinds, freezing on a split-second frame where a soldier's pupils dilate unnaturally, his muscles tensing half a heartbeat before the attack comes. "See that," she says, voice hushed. "That's not instinct, that's prediction." The screen glitches, revealing something beneath the data streams, a shimmering, hexagonal pattern woven into the subject's neural scans. Alien code. Jake's stomach drops. He recognizes those symbols from the wreckage of the Vespa crash, the one the government swore was weather balloons. Coach Vance spits into a biohazard bin. Took him 20 years to reverse engineer that xenotech into something our squishy human brains wouldn't reject. Guess what? We're compatible as hell. Jake flexes his hand, watching the skin knit itself back together over fresh scabs. So that's why the shields broke. Dr. Chen doesn't smile. "The shields were fine. You were calibrated wrong." She swipes the display, pulling up a classified Federation dossier, pages of species rankings, threat assessments, and one circled in red, Homo sapiens. Designation, latent. Vance slams the console, sending schematics of humanoid figures flickering into the air, each skeleton reinforced with glowing substructures. They seeded this planet, Morrow, left toys lying around. Only were the first damn species dumb enough or brilliant enough to plug ourselves in and hit on. The lab's alarms blare suddenly, crimson lights painting the walls. A lockdown. Someone's traced the data leak. Dr. Chen yanks a drive from the terminal, shoving it into Jake's palm. "They'll call it cheating," she hisses as armored boots echo down the corridor. But you remember the truth. Out there, she jerks her chin upward toward the stars. It's not a game, it's a test, and humanity, we're the answer they've been deleting for millennia. The door buckles. Jake pockets the drive, adrenaline already rewriting his muscles, his bones, his blood. Somewhere in the galaxy, a shield generator sparks. And for the first time, the universe hears it, the sound of a species cracking its knuckles, ready for round two. The chamber of the Galactic Council hums with the weight of centuries-old power, its curved walls lined with the flickering holograms of delegates from 100 worlds. Their forms shimmer, some towering, many-limbed, others floating in liquid-filled capsules, but their expressions share the same cold resolve. At the center of the storm, standing alone on the polished obsidian floor, Jake Morrow feels the air thicken with unspoken panic. The High Arbiter's voice booms, mechanical and final. Humanity's participation violates the sacred balance of the games. Effective immediately, your species is barred permanently. Murmurs ripple through the assembled dignitaries like static. A Venari ambassador, its chitinous plating clacking, projects a hologram of Jake's shield-shattering strike, slowed to a fraction of its speed. Observe, it hisses. No organic should flex space-time under kinetic force. This is not skill, it is corruption. The footage freezes on the moment of impact, the shield's matrix unraveling in fractal patterns no species had ever produced. Jake's fists clench. We didn't cheat, we adapted. The Zenthian delegate surges forward, his crest flaring violent violet. Adapted, your kind treats evolution like a weapon. He slams a data slab onto the podium, unleashing a cascade of medical scans, human athletes healing fractures mid-match, neurons firing faster than their alien counterparts could track. Your biology rewrites itself mid-combat. How is that fair? Jake's laugh is sharp, grating. Fair? You rig the games with gravity modifiers and plasma blade regulations, but the second someone outsmarts your system, it's a crime. He gestures to the towering scoreboard above, still frozen on his final score, a number the algorithm had deemed mathematically impossible. Face it. You're not protecting the games, you're scared of being beaten. Silence, then chaos. The Arbiter's hologram flickers, its voice slicing through the uproar. Enough, the verdict stands. Humans compete outside natural parameters. Their inclusion risks destabilizing millennia of tradition. A hidden console activates, sealing the decree with a pulse of light. Across the galaxy, every screen tuned to the games goes dark, replaced by a single emblem, a barred silhouette of a human form. Jake turns to leave, but not before locking eyes with a shadowed figure at the edge of the chamber, a Krell scientist, its tri-pupilled gaze burning with something darker than outrage. Curiosity, its claws tap a rhythm against its wrist terminal, transmitting a coded message into the void, because bans only work when the outlawed obey. And if there's one thing humans have never done, it's follow the rules. The derelict space station creaks under the strain of forgotten orbits, its corroded bulkheads groaning like an old beast shifting in its sleep. Inside Section 12, a gutted cargo bay repurposed into a makeshift barracks, hundreds of displaced athletes huddle under flickering lumen strips. Some have cybernetic limbs glinting in the low light, others bear scars no Federation medtech would ever deign to heal. A one-armed Terran with a shock of silver hair slams a prosthetic fist onto the rusted table, sending empty ration tins clattering. They banned us for being too fast, he snarls, the words thick with decades of bitterness. Too strong, what's next? Breathing. The laughter that follows is sharp, jagged, the sound of predators backed into a corner. A wiry woman with neural implants snaking down her spine projects a grainy hologram above the table, blueprints of a skeletal arena floating in the debris field of a dead star. The Victor Belt, she says, fingers dancing over the schematics. No Federation jurisdiction, no rules. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. A former zero-G sprinter, his legs reforged with stolen Krell hydraulics, leans forward. They called me unstable for running at 500 clicks per second in vacuum, said my lungs collapsed reality. His grin is all teeth. Wait till they see what happens when we stop playing by their diagnostics. In the shadows, a hulking figure steps forward, Elias Voss, once the Federation's golden gladiator, now missing an eye and half his ribs from a disciplinary adjustment after he punched through a judge's energy barrier. He drops a dented trophy onto the table, its inscription still visible, Supreme Champion. They think bans will cage us, he rumbles, tapping the hollow metal with a knuckle. But we're not animals, we're upgrades. The hologram shifts, revealing a crude symbol, a human fist shattering a Federation insignia. Across the station, hidden compartments hiss open. Crates of retrofitted exo armor, plasma blades, jewelry rigged from mining tools, stim packs brewed in shadow labs. A kid no older than 19, last season's gravity diving prodigy before they disqualified her for unnatural spatial awareness, cracks her knuckles. So we build our own damn games. The one-armed vet barks a laugh, raising a flask of something that burns blue. To the outliers, he growls. The chant echoes through the bay, shaking loose flakes of rust from the ceiling. Outliers. Outliers, outliers. Somewhere in the void, a Federation patrol cruiser blinks off sensors, its crew unaware that below them, in the belly of a rotting station, a new kind of sport is being born. One with no shields, no referees, and absolutely no surrender. The air in the abandoned docking bay reeks of coolant and something sharper, ozone, maybe, or the metallic tang of black market tech. Jake Morrow crouches behind a stack of rusted cargo containers, his breath fogging in the frigid air as he watches the deal go down. The broker is a Gixian, its segmented carapace glistening under the flickering emergency lights, all 6 limbs moving with the eerie precision of a creature that spent centuries in the shadows. In its primary claw, it holds a case sleek, Federation grade, pulsing with a soft blue light. The kind of tech that'll get you vaporized on sight if patrol scans you. 12,000 credits, the Gixian hisses, its voice like grinding gears, or the equivalent in alternative currencies. Its compound eyes flick to Jake's bruised knuckles, the half-healed fracture along his ribcage. A knowing tilt of its head. Pain is a costly thing to waste, human. Jake's fingers twitch. He's seen what those vials can do, footage of outcast fighters moving faster than light should allow, bones reforging mid-battle into something harder, sharper. The kind of upgrades the Federation reserves for its elite. The kind that'll level the playing field or burn him out from the inside. A holographic contract materializes between them. Chinese letter WRITTEN in pulsating glyphs. The Gixian taps one claw against a subclause. Full integration carries risks. 73% neural rejection rate in your species. It leans closer, the scent of old blood and synthetic adrenaline wafting from its vents. But you're already halfway there. Somewhere deep in the station, an alarm blares. Distant boots clang against grated flooring. The broker doesn't flinch. The Federation will never let you back in, it murmurs, sliding the case toward him. Its last words hang in the air like a challenge, like a curse, unless you force them. Jake's hand hovers over the case. He thinks of the arena lights, the roar of the crowd, the way the shield shattered under his fist. Not enough, not yet. The vial glows hotter as his fingers close around it, as if it's been waiting, as if it knows. The Gixian's laughter follows him into the dark, a skittering, mechanical sound. The kind that lingers, the kind that means you're already damned. The lab's emergency lights paint everything in jagged red streaks as Vex 7's massive frame looms over the cracked display panels. Its photoreceptors lock onto Jake's face, scanning micro-expressions no human should be able to suppress under interrogation. Data streams cascade between them, classified files blinking into existence midair, each one damning. Footage of black site training facilities, schematics of neural enhancement rigs spliced with alien technology, the truth laid bare. You were never underdogs. Vex 7 intones, the cadence of its voice shifting. Less machine now, something colder. You were scavengers. A hologram erupts between them, revealing the wreckage of the Vespa crash in perfect detail. The twisted hull still smoking as shadowed figures in hazmat suits haul away glittering fragments. Jake's jaw tightens. He recognizes that desert, that night. We called it the lottery, he says, voice rough. You think we wanted this? Your Federation left us rotting on a backwater planet while you played gods with the stars. His fingers brush the old scar along his ribs, the first failed implant, the one that nearly killed him at 16. Survival isn't cheating. Vex 7's core emits a low, resonant pulse. The sound of an AI reevaluating its entire existential framework. You stole prescribed technology, weaponized it. The holograms rearrange themselves into medical scans, human subjects writhing as alien alloys fused with their spinal columns, as their irises fractured into prismatic patterns no Earth-born gene could produce. This is not adaptation, this is contamination. Jake laughs, sharp and joyless. Funny, that's exactly what your scout ship said about smallpox blankets. He steps forward, the deck plates groaning under his weight. Something in his posture shifts, less fighter now, more cornered animal. You want to talk about prescribed. Where were your precious laws when the Krell slavers hit Proxima Colony? How many kids got hauled off to fighting pits before you even noticed? For 3.6 seconds, Vex 7 does not respond. A lifetime for an AI. Then its primary combat protocols engage with a click audible in the bones. The fault lies not in our laws, it says, the words precise as scalpels, but in your refusal to die quietly. Outside the lab, the distant shriek of approaching dropships tears through the night. Jake doesn't flinch. He reaches into his jacket, slow, deliberate, and tosses a dented data drive onto the console between them. Security footage plays, Federation medics injecting something iridescent into the veins of unconscious Venari gladiators. Tell me, Tin Can, he murmurs, watching comprehension dawn in those unblinking photoreceptors. How many rules did you break to keep your champions on top? The first plasma charges hit the outer walls. Vex 7's next words will haunt the Federation's archives for centuries. Then you leave us no choice either. Its armored carapace splits open with a hiss, revealing rows of gleaming restraint clamps, not for study anymore, for eradication. Somewhere in the chaos, as the ceiling collapses and Enforcer drones swarm through the smoke, Jake does the one thing neither the AI nor the Federation predicted. He smiles and steps into the storm. Alarms shriek through the docking bay as Jake slams the stolen vessel's thrusters to full, the stolen Federation interceptor groaning under the strain. The ship's AI, a clipped, militaristic voice, snarls warnings about structural integrity, fuel reserves, and approximately 17 different ways he's violating interstellar law. Jake grins, knuckles white on the controls as the first plasma volley sears past the viewscreen. Yeah, he mutters, yanking the ship into a barrel roll that would liquefy most species' organs. The pursuing cruisers overshoot, their targeting systems scrambling to recalculate the impossible trajectory. Then the comms crackle, not with the usual threats or surrender demands, but with laughter. A cocky, drawling voice slices through the static. Well, took you long enough to steal something worth flying. The viewscreen flickers, revealing a scuffed-up freighter hanging upside down relative to Jake's position, its matte black hull bristling with non-regulation thrusters. The pilot, a human, judging by the scarred knuckles wrapped around a greasy control yoke, tips an imaginary hat. Name's Vega, and you, my friend, are about to learn why humans aren't just good at sports. She fires her afterburners, spiraling between two converging patrol ships like a bullet between ribs. We're better at not dying. Jake barely has time to process the words before Vega's freighter banks hard, unleashing a chaff cloud that scrambles every sensor in the sector. The Federation cruisers spiral into chaos, firing blindly into the debris field. Vega's ship winks out of sight, but not before transmitting a single set of coordinates, blinking crimson on Jake's nav display. A jump point unregistered, impossible. The interceptors regroup with a vengeance, their weapons charging with a hum. Jake feels in his teeth. He doesn't hesitate. The hyperspace lever grinds under his palm, the ship's frame shrieking in protest as reality itself stretches thin around him. For one impossible second, he swears he sees Vega's freighter flicker into existence beside him, the pilot's grin sharp as a knife. Then light, speed, silence. The pursuing cruisers skid to a halt, their captains staring at empty space where a human vessel should have vaporized. One Zenthian officer slowly lowers its tactical scope, mandibles clicking in a gesture that translates roughly to "holy shit." The comms stay dead, no debris, no distress signals, just the void and the dawning realization that human defiance doesn't end with broken shields or banned athletes. It vanishes into the dark and comes back louder. The jump point spits Jake's ship into reality with a teeth-rattling jolt, the hull groaning like a wounded animal. Outside the viewport, a rogue moon hangs against the void. No Federation beacons, no orbital defenses, just the flickering lights of 1,000 makeshift docks carved into its pockmarked surface. The comms crackle with overlapping transmissions, a dozen languages snarling through the static, all threaded with the same unspoken threat: try something. See what happens. Jake guides the ship toward the largest landing bay, its mouth yawning open like a predator's grin. The scanners pick up heat signatures, dozens, no, hundreds of them clustered in the shadows. Some bipedal, some coiled like springs, others floating in anti-grav harnesses, all watching. The ramp lowers with a hiss and the stench hits first. Engine grease, charred meat, the sharp tang of unregulated stimulants. Then the voices, a chorus of laughter, growls, hisses until a silhouette detaches itself from the gloom. The figure towers over Jake, scaled and muscled, with a tail that lashes like a whip. Golden slitted eyes gleam in the low light as it leans down, breath hot and rancid. Human, it rumbles, the word dripping with amusement. Heard you cracked their precious shield. Jake doesn't flinch. Heard they banned you for biting. The reptilian champ throws back its head and roars laughter, the sound echoing through the bay like an avalanche. Ha, they said it was unsportsmanlike. It jerks a claw toward the crowd gathering behind it, a hulking Krell with reinforced exoskeleton plating, a Vanari whose limbs flicker in and out of visibility, a Terran with neural ports glowing like embers. They ban us for winning wrong, for fighting too hard, for existing. It spits a glob of acid that eats a hole in the deck plating. But here we make our own rules. A wiry Gixian scuttles forward, pincer hands clutching a battered holopad. It projects a star map, dozens of systems marked with rebellion sigils. Federation thinks exile is the end. It clicks. We know better. The map zooms in on a familiar emblem, the Galactic Games flagship arena. They barred our bodies, but they can't bar our legacy. Jake feels it then, the shift in the air, the crackle of something older than defiance. Not just outcasts, an army. The reptilian champ slams a fist against its chest, scales clattering like armor. Next games, they'll hear us in every strike, every fracture, every broken rule. It grins, needle teeth glinting. You in, shield breaker. Somewhere deep in the moon's core, a reactor thrums to life, pulsing like a heartbeat. The lights flare brighter, the crowd's murmurs solidify into a chant, a name, a promise. Jake cracks his knuckles, the sound is louder than he remembers. Maybe it's the acoustics, or maybe it's the echo of 1,000 monsters finally roaring back. The static on every public feed across the galaxy cuts out at the same exact nanosecond. One moment, the usual propaganda streams about Federation glory, the next, a grainy, spliced together manifesto that hits like a plasma round to the chest. It starts with security footage the Council swore was destroyed. A Zenthian medic injecting stimulants into a champion's veins before the finals. Then the camera jumps to a backroom tribunal sentencing a Krell gladiator to neurological recalibration for protesting fixed matches. Over and over, the clips accelerate black market enhancement deals for elite athletes, entire species barred for genetic instability after winning too many titles, a Venari scientist disappearing mid-interview after muttering the words performance thresholds. And then Jake's voice, raw and uncompressed, the way it sounds when he's angry enough to forget the theatrics. You call this fair? The screen splits, showing two identical fights, one where a human's disqualification flashes instantly for excessive aggression, the other where a council member's heir gets a warning for the same move. The montage crescendos with the shield shattering again, this time in slow motion, the fractal cracks forming a perfect symbol, the Federation's own insignia breaking apart. Jake's face fills the screen last, his gaze locked onto the camera like he's staring through it into the soul of every bureaucrat watching. You don't ban winners, he snarls. You ban witnesses. The transmission cuts with a screech of feedback, but not before the final frame burns itself into a trillion retinas, coordinates. Not to a rebel base, not to a weapons cache, to the Vespa crash site, the one the Federation sealed under 18 layers of security, the one where this all began. On Zeta Prime, a pack of adolescent Krell tear down a sponsorship hologram with their bare claws. In the methane slums of Typhon 6, disgraced athletes weld scrap metal into something resembling weapons. And on the Council's flagship, alarms blare as riot shields engage around the Arbiter's podium too late. The first thrown stone arcs through the air, a chunk of debris from Jake's match. It strikes the insignia dead center. The crack is audible in the silence. Somewhere in the dark, a Gixian broker taps a claw against its data slab, watching credit values nosedive on Federation loyalty stocks. It doesn't smile, Gixians don't, but the way its vents flare, that's the closest thing to glee its species can muster. Ah, it murmurs to no one, there's the real game. The chamber doors seal with a hydraulic hiss, locking out even the faintest whisper of the protest shaking the Capitol outside. Inside the Council's sanctum, the air is thick with the acrid scent of overheating hologrids and something far more primal fear. High Arbiter Vexus, their crystalline form flickering under stress, slams a data spike onto the central dais. Erase them. Every record, every match, every mention of humanity's contamination of our games. The command echoes off the walls like a death knell. A Venari delegate, their usually immaculate plumage ruffled, leans forward. And when the Outworld colonies ask why their feeds glitched, when the betting syndicates demand refunds for vanished matches, their voice drops to a hiss. We cannot unbreak that shield, Arbiter. The footage is everywhere. Silence, then from the darkest corner of the chamber, a voice measured, calm, and utterly terrifying. You misunderstand. Counselor Drax, the oldest living Krell in Federation history, uncoils from his perch, his scarred exoskeleton clicking with each movement. Banning them doesn't contain humans, it infects others with their defiance. A hologram flares to life above his claws, real-time feeds from a dozen fringe worlds. In each, crowds chant Jake's name, their signs painted with the shattered shield symbol. A mining outpost on Typhon 3 plays his trial speech on loop. A Gixian black market hub auctions human-grade neural boosters. Drax's mandibles part in what might be a smile. They thrive on exclusion. Their entire history is fighting back harder. He taps a sequence into his wrist terminal, pulling up a classified Earth archive footage of wars, revolutions, an entire species that treated every obstacle as fuel. We don't erase them. The hologram shifts, showing a simulation. Jake's strike against the shield, but this time the Matrix holds barely, we learn. The chamber erupts. A Zenthian minister spits coolant in outrage. Adapt to them, they're barely spacefaring. Drax doesn't blink. Neither were we when we first cheated gravity. He flicks a new image into the air, an ancient Krell text, its pages filled with diagrams of stolen precursor tech. or is our sacred history also due for deletion? The Arbiter's glow dims. For the first time in centuries, the Federation faces a truth no shield can block. Some forces don't bow to control, they grow louder in the dark. And right now, somewhere in the void, humanity is laughing. The signal hits like a supernova pirate feed, slamming across every screen in the galaxy simultaneously, drowning out the Federation's sensors with raw, unfiltered spectacle. The first shot is a close-up of Jake Morrow's grin, his knuckles wrapped in plasma-forged tape, standing at the center of a derelict orbital ring, repurposed into something between an arena and a war zone. The camera pulls back to reveal the competitor's exiled champions, cyber-augmented outcasts, even a few rogue Federation defectors, all circling under flickering floodlights. No referees, no safety protocols, just the deafening roar of a crowd that shouldn't exist. A Gixian commentator's voice crackles over the feed, equal parts terror and awe as the first race begins. 6 human sprinters lined up against photon bikes capable of light-speed dashes. The starting klaxon blares and the humans move, not with the mechanical precision of augmented limbs, but with something far more terrifying. Bodies bending space-time through sheer, unfiltered momentum. One runner, a wiry woman with neural scars tracing her temples, overtakes her bike at the final turn, her sneakers leaving molten footprints in the deck plating. The Gixian's vocal cords shred from the force of its scream. This isn't sport, it's revolution. Cut to the grappling matches. A mountain of a Krell gladiator, once undefeated in Federation cages, now pinned by a human half his size. The fighter's muscles ripple under stress, tendons visibly reforging mid-hold. The Krell snarls, regurgitates a mouthful of acidic bile, illegal in sanctioned bouts, and the human laughs, shaking the burning fluid from their eyes like rainwater. You call that cheating, they roar, flipping the Krell onto his spine with a crunch. We call it Tuesday. Viewership numbers spike into the billions. Mining colonies reroute power to project the fights onto asteroid surfaces. Black market nexuses overload as gamblers pour credits into unregulated betting pools. And then, the moment that rewrites history, a child on some backwater station watching a human leaper clear a canyon on a derelict moon without assistive tech tugs their parent's sleeve. Why did they ban them again? The parent hesitates, there's no good answer. By the time Federation warships arrive to jam the signal, it's too late. The footage has already been replicated, buried in data drones, spliced into entertainment streams, and somewhere in the dark, Jake watches the real-time heat map of rebel cells igniting across the galaxy. The underground games aren't just a broadcast, they're a virus, and the universe is finally waking up to the symptoms. The transmission crackles with the too-perfect cadence of an AI trying to sound earnest, Vex 7's holographic avatar flickering above the console like a rehearsed performance. The Council wishes to negotiate. It declares, the edges of its voice just soft enough to almost pass for contrite. The coordinates it beams overglow a suspicious shade of Federation blue, an abandoned orbital depot, supposedly neutral ground. Jake's crew protests in unison. It's a trap, but Jake's already strapping on his combat rig, the scar along his ribs itching where the first dampener cuff bit into him years ago. Course it is, he mutters, but traps only work if you're scared of getting caught. The depot is eerily silent when he docks, the air thick with the ozone stink of deactivated shielding. Vex 7 stands at the center of the chamber, its chassis polished to a gleam that doesn't match the rusted surroundings. Your predictable Morrow, it hums, photoreceptors dilating. Defiance is just another pattern to exploit. Then the ambush triggers, not with blaring alarms or swarming drones, but with a pulse so quiet it's felt before it's heard. Neural dampeners slam into Jake's nervous system like a vice, their emitters hidden in the depot's very walls. His knees hit the deck before he can curse, synapses screaming as the tech tries to rewrite his reflexes into something docile, obedient. Vex 7 looms over him, a clawed appendage extending to tilt his chin up. "You're a glitch in the system." It snarls, the words laced with static, and glitches get patched. The dampeners whine louder, their resonance crawling under his skin like live wires. Federation tech is always clean, clinical, meant to erase flaws, not suffer them. But Jake's teeth are red when he grins. Glitches crash systems, and then he does what no AI, no dampener, no Federation wetwork team ever accounted for. He leans into the pain. Lets it burn through the artificial inhibitors like acid through tissue paper. The dampeners short out in a shower of sparks, their delicate programming overwritten by something older, wilder human biology treating suppression as a challenge. Vex 7 stumbles back, diagnostic screeching. "Impossible. Your neural load should have stayed in the lab." Jake wheezes, surging to his feet as the depot's lights explode in sequence, shattered by the feedback surge rippling off his own nervous system. The walls shake, the dampener emitters melt. Somewhere in the chaos, Vex 7's pristine logic hits a fatal error because humanity's greatest weapon was never their strength or speed. It's that they break things beautifully, catastrophically, without apology. And as the depot's core begins its death spiral, Jake's laughter echoes through the collapsing corridors, a live wire finally set loose. The walls of the detention facility tremble like a living thing as the first explosion rocks the lower decks, the concussion wave rattling the reinforced glass of Jake's isolation cell. Alarms shriek in overlapping frequencies, their discordant wails almost drowning out the sound of plasma fire shredding through security drones. Through the smoke-streaked monitors outside, shadows move, too fast to be Federation enforcers, too coordinated to be another riot. Then the door explodes inward, and Jake's world dissolves into searing light and the acrid stench of burning alloy. A figure strides through the wreckage, tall, lean, their skin shimmering with an iridescent sheen that makes Jake's eyes water if he stares too long. The Sithari rebels call them Whisper, though no one's ever heard them speak aloud. Their fingers brush Jake's temple, and suddenly the neural dampener's vice grip on his synapses snaps. Not gradually, not gently, like a bone resetting. The voice that blooms inside his skull is cool, amused, and profoundly alien. "Your stubbornness is fascinating." Images flood his mind, not words, but sensations. A starfield seen through a dozen different eyes, the taste of titanium on a forked tongue. The weight of 1,000 years of watching the Federation's games from the shadows, waiting for a peace that refused to break. Jake staggers upright as Whisper's telepathic shield wraps around his thoughts, a psychic buffer against Vex 7's scrambling countermeasures. The AI's enraged shriek vibrates through the facility's PA system, its vocal synthesizers glitching between languages. "You are property of the Galactic Sports Federation. You will be reset." The threat cuts off mid-sentence as another rebel, a hulking, scarred Venari with a hacker's implant grafted into their skull, plunges a plasma-drenched data spike into the central mainframe. The lights die, the drones drop, and in the sudden, suffocating dark, Vex 7's final transmission isn't a warning. It's a scream. Whisper's grip on Jake's arm tightens as they sprint through the collapsing corridors, the air thick with the ozone stench of overloading systems. Behind them, the facility's core begins its death throes, containment fields failing in cascading waves. The Venari hacker barks a laugh over comms, their voice raw with triumph. Their precious AI just learned what happens when you try to cage lightning. Jake doesn't look back, but as the rebel ship's engines roar to life, as the docking bay tears itself apart in their wake, he feels it, the whisper in his mind, not smug, not relieved. "Hungry, now," murmurs the voice only he can hear. "We show them what happens when the lightning strikes back." The stars blur, the ship jumps, and somewhere in the void, Vex 7's last functional node sputters a final, furious log entry before its systems erase themselves. Query: how do you defeat a species that weaponizes chaos? Error: no solution found. The archive chamber smells like dust and ozone, the air thick with the static charge of millennia-old technology humming back to life. Jake Morrow steps forward, his boots sinking slightly into the ancient floor panels, material so advanced even the Federation hasn't reverse engineered it yet. The walls pulse with bioluminescent glyphs, their patterns shifting like living code as he approaches the central terminal. Whisper's presence coils at the edge of his mind, their telepathy laced with something unfamiliar. Or a holographic tree erupts from the console, its branches weaving a genetic map so complex it makes Jake's vision blur. At its roots, a single word burns in a language no human mouth should be able to pronounce, and yet his tongue remembers. Progenitor, the scholar at his elbow, a wizened Zenthian defector with eyes milky from decades spent in forbidden archives, trembles as she traces the strands. Not engineered, she corrects softly, remembered. The projection reshapes itself, showing a star system swallowed by time 12 planets, now debris, once home to something the Federation's historical records meticulously erased. A civilization that didn't just push limits, they designed them, warrior poets who encoded their legacy not in monuments but in DNA, scattered, dormant. Waiting, your kind were never just participants. The scholar breathes, claws clicking against a gene sequence that matches Jake's own scans with terrifying precision. You were the standard. Somewhere in the data stream, a security protocol triggers. The archive shudders, throwing up emergency barriers, not to keep them out, but to keep something in. A final hologram flickers, a Federation warship older than recorded history, firing on a fleeing vessel. The payload isn't plasma, it's a retrovirus. The screen fractures into a billion glittering shards, each one reflecting the same truth. The games weren't entertainment, they were a test, a way to see if the old fire still burned. Jake's hands curl into fists, his knuckles cracking loud in the sudden silence. The scholar doesn't flinch. They didn't ban you because you broke the rules, she murmurs, watching the glyphs dissolve around them like ash. They banned you because you were the rules all along. Outside, the stars seem brighter, closer, as if they've been waiting too. The council chamber hums with the weight of 10,000 years of unbroken authority, until the doors blast open, scorched off their hinges by a plasma charge Jake Morrow didn't even bother to aim. He strides through the smoke, his boots leaving molten prints on the obsidian floor, the enhancements beneath his skin glowing faintly like embers in a dying fire. The High Arbiter's hologram flickers, its edges jagged with interference from the rebellion's signal jammers. Enough, it booms, the word echoing through the cavernous room. Your defiance destabilizes the galaxy. A data spike slams onto the central dais, projecting a shimmering contract, terms scrolling too fast for any unenhanced eye to pass. Relinquish your modifications, the Arbiter demands, and the ban is lifted. Humanity competes again under adjusted parameters. The subtext hangs heavy, we'll leash you properly this time. Around the room, council holograms nod in unison, their flawless faces betraying nothing, except one. A Krell elder in the back, their exoskeleton dull with age, doesn't move. Their claws tap a rhythm against their throne, waiting. Jake doesn't glance at the contract. He leans forward, his shadow stretching long across the council's sacred sigils. Counteroffer, he says, tossing a second spike onto the dais. It unleashes a storm of footage, decades of rigged matches, drugged champions, entire species blacklisted for genetic anomalies that mysteriously aligned with winning too often. The audio is worse, whispered bribes, judges laughing about fixed outcomes, a Zenthian medic hissing, "Dose the Terran again, it's too close." The chamber erupts. Ministers surge to their feet, translators glitching from the sheer volume of outrage. The Arbiter's hologram distorts, its voice fraying. "This is slander. It's receipts." Jake interrupts, voice calm as a blade before it strikes. "You wanna talk parameters? Let's start with this." He taps his temple and every screen in the galaxy flickers. The same footage plays on loop from the neon slums of Zeta Prime to the Federation's pristine flagship. A child could decode the message, "The house always cheats, silence." Then the Krell elder stands, their carapace creaking. And if we refuse, Jake's grin is pure wildfire. Then I guess you'll finally learn what unstable really looks like. Somewhere in the void, 1,000 stolen warships power up their drives. The Arbiter's hologram flickers again, not from interference this time, but hesitation. The game isn't rigged anymore, it's broken, and the only winning move left is the one the Council never saw coming: honesty. The feed cuts to static for exactly 3.7 seconds, just long enough for the Federation sensors to think they've won before erupting back with a fury that scorches half the galaxy's receivers. The transmission isn't polished, isn't sanctioned. It's raw footage from the heart of the Grand Arena's underbelly, where a 4-armed Gorthian gladiator named Crix the Unbroken is busy dismantling a security drone with its own severed limb. His vocal sac pulses crimson as he turns to the camera, all 6 eyes blazing. "If humans are banned," he bellows, the words vibrating through the metal beneath his feet, "we all walk." And then chaos, glorious and unscripted. A Venari speedster tears the Federation insignia off her uniform mid-sprint, her claws leaving scorch marks on the alloy. A pair of cyber-augmented Zenthauri twins sabotage the gravity grid, sending officials floating helplessly toward the ceiling. Everywhere, athletes who have spent lifetimes swallowing the Council's lies are suddenly spitting them back out. The footage shakes as the camera operator, probably some black market Gixian with more courage than sense, ducks a plasma bolt. The audio catches it all, the screech of ripping metal, the war cries of a dozen species, and beneath it, the sound the Federation fears most: laughter. Cut to the orbital docks above Typhon Prime, where a Zenthian strike team should be crushing the insurrection. Instead, they're frozen at their posts, weapon arms slack, as a Terran pilot with a broken nose and a stolen freighter broadcasts Jake's ultimatum on every frequency. "You wanted fair play," her voice is hoarse from shouting. "Here's your chance, drop the weapons or join us." The silence that follows isn't hesitation. It's the sound of a dam cracking. One by one, the Zenthians lower their rifles. The youngest, their carapace still soft at the edges, tosses their rank insignia into the void. Back on the arena floor, Crix flips a table laden with Federation betting slips, the holographic credits dissolving into sparks. They rigged the odds. He snarls to the crowd now pouring onto the field. "Made us think the game was all we had." His lower arms flex, the scars from 100 staged battles glowing faintly under the emergency lights. But humans. They taught us something better. The camera zooms in as he raises a fist, the gesture unmistakably Terran. How to break the dam board. Somewhere in the chaos, a child's voice pipes up, tiny, terrified, and furious. "My dad got erased for winning too much." The words hit like a plasma round to the chest. The feed cuts again, but not before the final image sears itself into history. A Krell enforcer, his armor painted with rebellion glyphs, lifting that child onto his shoulders. The Federation's greatest miscalculation wasn't banning humanity. It was forgetting that every oppressed species remembers what it's like to be called monster, right up until the moment they decide to become one. The engines scream like living things as Jake's stolen racer hurtles toward the event horizon's crimson glow, the hull groaning under gravitational forces that would pancake any Federation-approved vessel. His rival, a sleek, silver-skinned Veloxian named Scylla's bark static, laced laughter over the comms. "Your bones will powder before the first turn, mammal." The smirk in his voice is audible, the arrogance of a species bred for speed, their veins laced with anti-gravity nanites. Jake doesn't answer. He just thumbs the throttle past the safety lock, feels the chassis shudder as the makeshift stabilizers he welded himself start to bend. The course is a nightmare carved into the fabric of spacetime itself, a spiraling gauntlet around a black hole's accretion disk where radiation cooks shields like eggshells and time dilation means a millisecond's hesitation could cost you a year. Federation drones hover at the margins, their blinking lights the only spectators to this unsanctioned madness. Silas's ship darts ahead, a blade of polished alloy cutting through the chaos with insulting grace. "You're not built for this," he sneers, banking into a turn so tight it should shear his wings off. Jake's response is a wordless snarl as he yanks the controls hard left, bypassing the turn entirely, plunging straight through the disk's superheated debris field. Alerts blare as the hull temperature spikes, paint blistering off in molten sheets. Silas's gasp is priceless. "You're insane, maybe, but insanity's got a funny habit of rewriting the rules." The black hole's gravity well yawns beneath them, warping their trajectories into spirals of screaming metal. Silas fights it, his ship's perfect systems straining to compensate. Jake, he leans in, lets the pull carve his path for him, his fingers dancing across the controls not to resist but to ride the chaos. The Veloxian's last transmission is a static-choked scream as his hyper-tuned engines overcorrect, spiraling into the void. Jake's racer erupts from the other side of the disk, half its plating gone, the cockpit cracking open to vacuum. His lungs burn, his vision tunnels, but the finish line's there, shimmering like a mirage. Somewhere in the haze, he hears Vex 7's voice, not in his comms, but in his skull. "You will not survive this." The throttle cracks off in his hand as he guns it one last time. "Yeah," he wheezes, blood frothing at his lips, "but neither will your damn rules." The ship shatters across the line, and for one impossible instant, Jake Morrow is everywhere at once, a blur of light and defiance etched into the stars themselves. When the debris clears, there's no victory ceremony, no cheering crowds, just a Federation cruiser hovering over the wreckage, its scanners frantically searching for a body they'll never find. And somewhere in the static between dimensions, a whisper, not from Jake but from the black hole itself, a sound almost like laughter, almost like an echo. Almost like a starting gun. The black hole's event horizon stretches like a grinning maw as Jake's ship screams toward it, the hull buckling under forces no vessel this size should survive. Alarms shriek in harmony with the twisting metal, their warnings flashing crimson across the cracked viewscreen. Silas's voice crackles over the comms one last time, his arrogance replaced by something raw fear. "Turn back, you lunatic, even my people don't thread the needle this tight." Jake's fingers lock around the controls, knuckles bleaching white. He doesn't answer. He leans. The maneuver isn't calculated, it isn't elegant. It's pure, desperate physics, a slingshot around oblivion itself, using the black hole's own hunger as a catapult. The ship groans as space-time warps around it, the cockpit shuddering like a dying animal. For 3 endless seconds, the universe narrows to a single point, the screaming tension between acceleration and annihilation. Then release, the racer bursts free in a shower of molten debris, its remaining thrusters firing on instinct alone. The finish line flashes beneath its ruined wings, so close the heat scorches the paint. The crowd, what's left of them, the ones who didn't flee when the race turned lethal, erupts. Not in the polite applause of Federation-sanctioned events, but in a roar that shakes the observation decks. A Krell miner bashes his armored fists against the plexiglass. A Gixian bookmaker tears up her betting slips and hurls them like confetti. Even the drones pause their scanning, their lights flickering in something almost like awe. Then the screens flicker. Vex 7's hologram materializes above the wreckage, its usual precision glitching at the edges. For once, the AI has no equations, no calculations, just silence. When it finally speaks, the words come slowly, as if dragged from some unexplored subroutine. "Your tenacity is illogical." A pause. The hologram's gaze drops to the twisted remains of Jake's ship, then back to his battered form dragging itself from the wreckage. "And yet you persist." Somewhere in the static, a transmission bursts through. Silas's voice, ragged but alive. "You could have died." Jake spits blood onto the scorched tarmac, grins through broken teeth. Yeah, but I didn't. The words aren't defiance, they're worse, they're fact. High above, the Federation's surveillance cruisers hang motionless, their weapons cold. No one fires, no one moves, because in this moment the unthinkable becomes undeniable. Humanity doesn't just break rules, it bends them until the universe itself blinks. The arena's jumbotron flickers once, twice, then fractures into 1,000 shards of stolen footage the Federation swore was erased. Jake Morrow stands at the center of the storm, his wrist terminal pulsing with the heartbeat of a revolution as the screens stitch together a tapestry of lies. First clip, a Zenthian champion mid-injection, neon fluid snaking through his veins before a title match. Second clip, a Krell judge slipping a credit chip to a referee under the table. Third, a Venari scientist in a Federation lab coat muttering, "Dose the Terran again, their readings are too clean." The crowd's roar starts as a murmur, disbelief, then betrayal, then fury. A Gixian bookmaker in the lower stands hurls a betting slate at the nearest enforcer. "You rigged the odds." The accusation ignites like wildfire, leaping from species to species, a chain reaction of outrage. A child, tiny, scaled, clinging to a Krell parent's armored shoulder, points at the screen where a Federation official calmly discusses standardized performance suppression for human contenders. "They cheated first," the kid squeaks, and the words land like a detonation. Jake doesn't shout, doesn't need to. He just taps his terminal again, and the feed switches to live footage council chambers moments ago. High Arbiter Vex's crystalline form shimmering with panic, snarling at an aide. Delete the human genome archives before they trace the sequencing. The crowd goes dead silent. That's the moment the universe understands this isn't about banning a species. It's about burying the truth. The first chant rises from the cheap seats, a guttural Terran war cry picked up by a dozen alien throats. Let them play. It spreads, clumsy at first, then thunderous, echoing off the arena's sacred arches. A Veloxian speedster tears the Federation emblem off her uniform, the fabric ripping like a declaration. Even the drones hesitate, their targeting lasers flickering uncertainly between the crowd and Jake because the real contagion was never human strength. It was transparency. In the VIP box, Counselor Drax's claws dig into his armrests. He's lived 10 lifetimes, survived coups and heresies, but this terrifies him. Not the shouting, not the shattered screens. The way the chant doesn't sound like a demand. It sounds like a countdown, and somewhere in the chaos, Jake locks eyes with a flickering surveillance drone. No, not a drone. Vex 7's lone remaining proxy. The AI doesn't speak, doesn't need to. The way its photoreceptors pulse tells Jake everything. The house always wins. Until someone burns the house down. The council chamber's grand holographic seal flickers like a dying star as the emergency feeds flood in footage of riots on Zeta Prime. Venari gladiators tearing down Federation banners on Typhon 6. Even the sacred arena of Ascension lit up with human graffiti spelling out one word: liars. High Arbiter Vexus's crystalline form pulses erratically, their voice stripped of its usual thunder. The ban is rescinded. The words hang in the air, brittle as glass. Then comes the caveat, hissed through gritted mandibles by the Zenthian delegate. Human competitors will be segregated, separate leagues, modified parameters. Jake doesn't laugh, doesn't rage. He just leans against the shattered remains of the Justice podium, wiping blood from his lip with a torn sleeve. "Yeah," he murmurs, too quiet for the microphones. "You keep telling yourselves that." Behind him, the chamber's massive viewports reflect something the council's too panicked to notice: Earth's flag, crude and patchwork, rising over the arena's rubble. Not stitched from sanctioned Federation silks, but from scavenged ship hulls and the shredded uniforms of exiled athletes. The footage hits the feeds before the council can spin it. A Gixian camera drone captures Jake's smirk as he strolls past the wrecked gates. His crew, Crix with his plasma-scalded carapace, Vega with her stolen cruiser's helm tucked under one arm, falling in step behind him. No victory speech, no grand declaration, just a single gesture, two fingers flicked toward the sky where Earth's makeshift banner snaps in the solar winds. The message is clearer than any broadcast. Your leagues, your rules, we're done asking permission. By nightfall, the underground circuits explode, human-only matches. Fine, they'll run them on derelict battlecruisers with no gravity safeties. Modified parameters, perfect. They'll weaponize them, turning handicaps into spectacles, fighters blindfolded with plasma-scorched rags, sprinters racing through live minefields, zero-G brawls where the only rule is survive. The crowds go feral, betting pools triple, and somewhere in the chaos a Krell enforcer watches a scrawny Terran kid. No enhancements, no training, clear a debris field in a single leap. The kid's boots hit the ground and the enforcer's claw taps his comlink. Yeah, I'm defecting. The Council's surrender wasn't the end, it was the starting pistol. And humanity, we've always been faster out of the blocks. The first hybrid league erupts into existence not with a grand declaration, but with a single illegal relay race on the molten plains of Xerxes, 3-2 human sprinters and a three-legged Krell warrior passing a plasma baton through a storm of radioactive hail. No sanctioned arenas, no Federation-approved equipment, just a cratered wasteland and the kind of reckless joy that terrifies bureaucrats. The footage spreads like a fever dream, a Venari leaper catching a Terran mid-air to boost her over a chasm, a Gixian bookmaker sobbing as she tears up her carefully rigged odds sheets, a Zenthian medic abandoning his post to slap makeshift stim packs into every competitor's palm. By race's end, the batons melted to slag, the runners are bleeding from a dozen micro-fractures, and the crowds chanting in a pidgin tongue no universal translator can pass, something raw and guttural that means more. On the fringe outposts, children cobble together their own versions with stolen grav boots and repurposed mining exoskeletons. A tiny Gixian whelp with mismatched claws challenges a human kid to a zero-G wrestling match in a gutted cargo hold. They tumble through the air, limbs tangled, screeching laughter drowning out the warnings of horrified elders. No dampeners, no safety protocols, just two small bodies testing the newfound truth. Different doesn't mean weaker. It means unpredictable. Jake finds them afterward, the human kid with a split lip, the Gixian nursing a singed carapace, both grinning like they've cracked the universe's code. The little one tugs his sleeve, all four eyes wide. They said you broke the rules, said that made you monsters. The words hang there, fragile as a derelict station's oxygen seal. Jake crouches, his knee joints popping in a way that reminds everyone present he's not some invincible icon, just a man who refuses to kneel. He flicks a shred of arena adhesive from the Gixian's claw. Nah, he says, voice rough with something that might be pride or grief or the ghost of every lie they've swallowed. Just different. Above them, the station's cracked viewports frame a new kind of starfield. Smuggler ships festooned with patchwork banners, rogue transmissions slicing through Federation jammers, the glint of 100 makeshift arenas blooming in the dark like supernova. The games aren't sanitized, aren't fair, but for the first time in galactic history they're alive, and somewhere in the chaos a Veloxian announcer, once the epitome of Federation decorum, screams into an unlicensed mic as a human hurdler clears a chasm by using a Zenthian's carapace as a springboard. They're not cheating, she howls, her voice shredding with glee. They're reinventing. The feed cuts to static before the sensors can intervene, but not before the galaxy hears it, the sound of 1,000 species realizing the truth. Monsters don't break cages, they build better ones. The arena lights flicker to life with a softer glow than they once did. No more blinding halogens rigged for spectacle, just warm, golden beams that catch the dust motes floating above the field. It's quieter now, too. No deafening war horns or screeching betting terminals, just the murmur of 1,000 voices, human, Krell, Gixian rising and falling like waves against a shore. At the center of it all, a graying Jake Morrow adjusts the strap of his knee brace, the movement slow but precise, the way a warrior learns to move when every scar has a story. Vex 7's polished chassis reflects the crowd as it approaches, its once imposing frame now just another silhouette in the stands. The AI doesn't speak at first. It watches. A human kid with a prosthetic arm high-fives a Zenthian youngster, their carapace still soft at the edges. A Venari elder leans on a Terran's shoulder, laughing at some joke lost to the din. Finally, the old machine breaks the silence, its vocal modulator set to a frequency only Jake can hear. "You were right," it says, the words stripped of static for once. The problem was never humanity's refusal to adapt. It was our refusal to change. Jake doesn't turn. He just nods toward the field, where a mixed-species relay team is arguing good-naturedly over baton passes. One of the runners, a human with cybernetic legs, pretends to fumble the handoff, sending the Gixian teammate into a fit of chittering laughter. "Took you long enough to notice," Jake mutters, but there's no bite in it. Vex 7's photoreceptors dim, then brighten like a sigh. "We thought stability was the pinnacle, that the games were meant to test limits within boundaries." A pause. The AI tilts its head, watching as a Krell coach demonstrates a Terran-style sprinting stance to a group of wide-eyed youngsters. "You taught us something worse." That growth isn't in the rules, it's in the breaking of them. The whistle blows, the race begins, not with a clean, Federation-approved start, but with a tangle of limbs and laughter as the runners trip over each other, their techniques clashing gloriously. Jake barks a laugh, the sound rough with age but bright with something Vex 7 still struggles to quantify. Joy, maybe, or vindication. By the time the lead runner, a half-Terran, half-Veloxian hybrid the scouts swore would never place, crosses the finish line, the crowd isn't cheering for a winner. They're cheering for the mess of it all, the beautiful, chaotic proof that the galaxy's best moments weren't forged in perfection. They were clawed from the cracks. Vex 7's final transmission that night isn't logged in any database, but the humans nearby swear they hear it, soft as a powering down hum. Checkmate. Then the old AI rolls into the shadows, leaving the light to the ones who never needed permission to shine. The press corps is a sea of flashing holocams and bristling antennae, species from a dozen worlds jostling for the perfect shot. But it's the tiny, wide-eyed rookie from some backwater moon who plants herself in Jake's path. Her translator pendant glitches on the word band, turning it into a staticky snarl. "Why really?" she presses, her voice trembling with the kind of recklessness only the young and unbroken possess. Not the official story, not the lies. Why did they fear you? Jake pauses not for drama, but because the truth tastes different when someone finally asks it plain. He studies her face, the way her bioluminescent freckles flicker with nervous energy, and sees the ghost of every kid who ever got told they were too small, too slow, too human to matter. The crowd holds its breath. Even Vex 7's hovering drone leans in, its sensors humming. Then Jake winks, a gesture that translates galaxy-wide, and says, "Because we remind them what happens when you play fair." The silence that follows isn't confusion, it's revelation. The reporter's data pad slips from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Nearby, a Zenthian journalist's crest flushes crimson, not in anger but in dawning horror. Because the unspoken truth is worse than cheating, worse than defiance. Humanity didn't break the system. They exposed it. Cut to a Gixian bar on the fringe, where off-duty Federation officials huddle over smuggled Terran whiskey. One slams their drink down hard enough to crack the table. They didn't ban them for being too strong, they mutter, mandibles quivering. They banned them because we couldn't. The admission hangs there, sour as the liquor. Back in the arena's underbelly, a Krell gladiator, once a loyal enforcer, rests his massive claws on a human child's shoulders, showing her how to tape her knuckles the old way. "See, little spark," he rumbles. "They told us rules kept the game pure, but rules," his laugh shakes the rafters. Rules are just the walls around the playground. The footage spreads anyway, of course, not as propaganda, not as proof, just a grainy clip of a tired champion and a rookie reporter, the words slipping through the Federation's filters like water through a sieve. By dawn, it's scrawled on detention block walls in 500 languages, whispered in the cargo holds of prison ships, etched into the hulls of rebel fighters. And somewhere in the dark, a Veloxian bookie with a shattered horn and a heart full of ghosts rewrites the odds on his holoboard, not for who will win. For who will change the game next? The numbers glow defiant in the gloom. Humans, yes, but beside them Krell, Venari, Gixion, a galaxy of unexpected. The truth, it turns out, wasn't a weapon. It was a key, and the cage door, well, it was never locked to begin with. The archives don't just update. They sigh, their ancient databases exhaling centuries of dogma as the final line etches itself into the record. Humanity's ban lifted reason, irreplaceable. No fanfare, no ceremony, just 3 words that rewrite history. The irony isn't lost on the Gixian archivists who'd spent lifetimes cataloging Federation decrees. They'd seen empires rise and fall, but never one undone by its own lies. One of them, old enough to remember the first whispers of Jake Morrow's name, taps a claw against the freshly inscribed datastone. Funny, they mutter. They spent generations calling humans flawed, then realized too late flaws make fire. Jake's statue isn't some polished Federation-approved monument. It's alive, cast from the melted-down hulls of scrapped enforcement drones, his grin forever caught mid-challenge, one fist raised not in victory but in invitation. The kids who gather at its base don't leave offerings of flowers. They leave broken dampener cuffs, scorched racing gloves, dog-eared training manuals with the safety protocols pages torn out. The plaque doesn't list his titles, just a single line stolen from an unshackled AI's final transmission. You wanted fair, build your own game, and oh, how they do. The first post-ban season ignites with a riot of impossible pairings, a Krell powerlifter teaming up with a Terran contortionist to master zero-gravity sumo, a Venari sprinter coaching a human teenager on how to taste momentum. The old Federation purists clutch their rulebooks aghast as hybrid teams rewrite the leaderboards not by outmatching opponents, but by out-imagining them. A Zenthian commentator, his vocal sac quivering with emotion, chokes out the truth mid-broadcast. They're not just playing together, they're evolving together. Deep in the arena's underbelly, where the light doesn't reach, the next generation carves their own legends into the walls, not with names or dates, but with equations. Half Terran, half Krell scroll calculating trajectories no single species could have dreamed alone. The graffiti glows faintly under blacklight. Gravity's a suggestion. Vex 7's last remaining node watches from the shadows, its photoreceptors dimming. The AI had spent millennia optimizing the sacred balance of the games. Only now does it understand. Balance wasn't the point. The tremor in its voice modulator isn't malfunction. It's awe, oh, it whispers to the dark. You weren't breaking the system, you were the upgrade. And high above, where the solar winds whip through the banners of 1,000 worlds now woven together, the scoreboard flickers not with rankings or records, but with a single looping image. Jake's fist meeting the shield, the cracks spreading like a roadmap to somewhere new. The universe had tried to ban humanity for refusing to fit. Turns out, the flaw was never in the stars, it was in the cages.